Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, we're going to go into, I would call it almost psychotic type behavior. And let me explain to you why I even said that, because when I do pre-interviews for guests, you know, the ideal is to actually listen to their story. And this is one story that really had me up all night with a lot more questions and trying to understand the answers behind it. But this isn't my story. This is somebody else's story, and I appreciate that they took the time to come and share such an extraordinary story. Really, it's clearly a beast mindset story, because you ask yourself, how in the hell could you allow this shit to happen to you? And then more importantly, how in the hell are you getting out of it to keep going forward? But just imagine you meet somebody and you think you know them cold-heartedly, you know everything about them. And then to find out, not only that, you marry them, then you start a life with them, you have a child by them, and then find out later, holy crap, what did I just marry? And now your whole life is completely changed. I'm going to get into too much of the details, because I'm going to let her tell a little bit of this story on her own, because this is who it happened to. Remember, this is a judge-free zone. Listen with compassion. And more importantly, try to walk in somebody else's shoes before you judge, okay? On today's show, I'd like to welcome, they call her the fitness lady on social media, so I'm going to let her talk about that at the end of the show. But let's welcome to the show, Miss Kimberly Williams. Kim, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you, Andre the Beast? Nice to be here.
I'm doing great. So we talked yesterday, and your story was just like truly like something from a sci-fi novel and all that, but we'll get into that in a minute. Before we do, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are before we get into your story.
Well, I'm Kim Williams. I'm on TikTok and other social media platforms as Kimmy in MD, basically Kimmy in the state of Maryland, Kimmy in MD. I do fitness, motivation. I do a little bit of Christian music on Sundays always, and I just try to keep my content fun, light, and happy.
When you was talking to me about this extraordinary life that you went through, this journey, I was truly taken by surprise. You are from Michigan, but you spent a lot of your years in Cleveland. I lived in Cleveland, Avon Lake. You lived in Cleveland. Let's start with the Cleveland journey in the guy that soon became your husband. How did that all turn out?
Well, I met my future husband in Toledo, Ohio, and he was running a major corporation, and I happened to work there, and he was my boss. And eventually, I relocated to Cleveland, where he was running the offices in Cleveland, and we eventually developed a relationship. He kind of mentored my career, and this was in the financial industry, where you're fully vetted and have to have background checks and everything else. And we dated for about 10 years before we got married, and then I had a baby. And then one day, everything just crashed down around me. The federal marshals broke in my front door. I heard a noise. I went and looked, and they had him in handcuffs. And it turns out he was not in this country legally. He was using dead people's social security numbers, and my whole life had already changed, because I'd been trying to get a divorce from this person, but because he had a lot of money and a lot of power and control, things were kept out of the court. So it was a battle. And there's more in that battle in there, but that's basically the gist of that story.
You said you met him in Toledo first. What was it about him that that lured you to him? Because your your stay with him went way beyond 10 years. So he mentored you at one point of your life. What was it about him that attracted you to him?
Oh, wow. He was so charismatic. I mean, extremely charismatic. He lit up a room when he came in. 6'6", this beautiful French accent because he wasn't from this country. Just so dynamic, so positive, spoke 5 different languages. He spoke African languages in addition. He traveled all over the world. He was probably the smartest person I'd ever met. I was only, 24 years old. And he was dynamic. He sucked everybody in. Everybody.
How old was he? Him? He was 24.
He was about 15 years older than me.
So you wind up, when did you guys start taking the relationship seriously?
Probably about, well, he had a daughter, so probably about 2 years into it, I would say. Yeah, probably about 2 years into it.
When you say that, and I know we're moving forward with which we're going to do. You mentioned that they came into your house and he was illegal and so forth. He had a daughter. You had spent at least 2 years of your life with him prior to going to Cleveland. There was no flags at that particular point that you questioned, or was it the fact that at 24 years old, you really wasn't, you was more mesmerized by the charm and charisma?
That might be it. It was an exciting, great life. I would say the first red flag came when there was a car accident and the police asked him for a social security number and he didn't know it. I would say another big red flag came when we went to Paris and he couldn't get in the country. Eventually he got in. And I couldn't understand why he just didn't use his U.S. passport. Of course, he didn't have a U.S. passport to use. He told me that he preferred to use his other nationality because of terrorists and things like that. But literally, I got turned out of the country of Italy. When we got there, I couldn't get in. And neither of us could get in. By the time we went to Dubai, they wouldn't let him in the country. And I was used to it by then. And I just said, figure it out. And I left him at the airport and went to the hotel and went to bed by myself. And the next day, he still wasn't back at the hotel. Because usually, in these third world countries, you can bribe somebody and you can get through. And he was still being detained in Dubai. And finally, when I got there, I got him out. And then we spent some time in Dubai. So, yeah, there were some red flags, but he always explained them away.
At 24 years old, you guys must have had a pretty lucrative business, because you're going to Dubai, you're going to France, you're going to all these different places. What kind of income were you guys making?
Well, we worked in the financial industry, and I don't know, Andre, I hate to say this, and it might sound like a cop-out. I didn't do anything but sign the tax return as a joint return, so I really don't know. And frankly, at this point, I don't know if it was all lies. I can tell you I signed a prenup in that marriage, and it was about $20 million prenup. But I don't know if it was actually real. I'm not sure I believe that the assets existed at this point after everything else that happened.
Why did you have to sign a $20 million prenup?
Well, that's what we signed a prenup. He'd already been through a first divorce and, he wanted a prenup, and I was fine with that. So I signed a prenup, and in a prenup, you have to disclose your assets. Both parties have to disclose their assets. I didn't have $20 million. Trust me. I didn't have anything like that. But he disclosed that his assets were about $20 million.
Then
So yeah, there was substantial income.
or you knew he had a daughter. Did you know the mom?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know the mom?
Yes, I knew the mother as well.
And
She was also not from this country.
Did you ask her if she had to sign a prenup? And did you ask any questions about him to her?
I did not. I did not. And I know she did not sign a prenup because she was very bitter about that divorce and how things were split or taken or whatever you want to say. I mean, it's in a divorce, there's two sides, you know, there's his side and her side, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. And I didn't communicate with her at all.
Okay, so you live in La Vida Loca. You're traveling all over the world. You're 24, 25, 26, and he's going into these countries and can't get in, and you're still not concerned.
Eventually he would get in. You know, eventually it would be taken care of. I mean, how could someone running a major working for a major company be illegal? That's not supposed to happen in this country. How could that be? I never, ever imagined this. It wasn't until after his arrest and the FBI agents or the federal marshals and the FBI told me that he was illegal, that he was using dead people's social security numbers. I had no idea. I don't know how. I mean, if you think of it, back in the 80s, computers weren't like they were today. And even if you had the computing systems, they weren't talking to each other. Systems weren't crossing. We didn't have Homeland Security and all these other things that we'd have since 9/11 to help take care of this stuff. It was a different world. And he spoke many languages. I couldn't understand when he was talking on the phone to people and stuff because it was languages I didn't know. You know, I don't know.
So you wind up being swept off of your feet. You wind up.
And can I just add one thing? When I eventually was going through boxes, I found letters like from Maxine Waters and things like that. He didn't just fool me. The man was a psychopath. Like in your intro, I kind of thought you were indicating that I was a psychotic person here. It wasn't. He was a psychopath. He was a con man and a psychopath, and they can fool a lot of people.
What were some of the letters that you found? What were some of the letters you found?
That things that they were working on. Supposedly, he was. You do remember that? In the Clinton administration, it wasn't Clinton. It was, there was that plane that crashed on that group of people that went to Africa because they were trying to do more commerce with Africa. He was supposed to have been on that plane. I think it was with Ron Brown. Was he like this? Are these names sounding familiar? I should have researched this a little bit more, but this is a long time ago in my life. This is 30 years ago, you know, so I'm not having the best recall, but he was supposed to have been on that plane. He fooled a lot of people. I have newspaper articles from him in Crane's Business and everything else. I mean, I wasn't the only person fooled. He sucked in a lot of people. So
you wind up being swept off of your feet and you relocate to Cleveland. And did you start this business in Cleveland? You left the one place, or was this a business you guys had and you translated and bought it? You transferred it and bought it to Cleveland?
No. So the move from Toledo to Cleveland was with the same corporation, not owned by him or anything like that. He was just an employee there. He was a high-level employee, but he was just an employee.
What was your role?
I was a financial planner, financial advisor.
For the same company. But he was your supervisor.
Yes.
He was your supervisor.
Yes, exactly. He ran the division.
So you guys were married when you left Toledo, to go to Cleveland to finish?
No,
So you got
we
married.
married in Cleveland.
Got married in Cleveland. How did he
He was
convince? How did
he
he
was married
convince
to the
you?
other woman in Toledo.
How did he convince you to go to Cleveland with him?
Boy, we weren't even really dating then. We didn't start dating until we moved to Cleveland. As I said, he mentored
You guys
my
are going
career.
to Dubai and France and London and Paris, and you guys wasn't dating?
That was when we were in Cleveland. We didn't do that in Toledo.
Okay, so all that happened.
Toledo,
Okay.
we just worked together.
Okay, so now you're in
Yeah.
Cleveland and you're going to all these places. So how did he convince you to go to Cleveland?
Well, I didn't like the office once he left. It just didn't have the same energy. And I wanted his knowledge. I wanted, as I said, he was my mentor. I wanted him to continue to keep teaching me and showing me that business. I mean, he left like within, a year of me starting, and I wanted to work for him. So I said, can I come and work in that office? And he said, if you want to, you can. And so I did.
What was he
So I relocated to Cleveland.
What was so valuable that he was teaching you that you felt you was going to?
Oh, gosh.
Did he go to college? Did he have a degree in what he was doing?
Oh, yes. He, well, don't forget, he came out of the French system. And then he went on full scholarship to Moscow State University in Russia.
Well, how do you know that if he, how do you know that if he's already faked Social Securities and faked and
you're absolutely right. It could all be
how do you know?
He did. He was fluent in Russian. I don't know. That's what I don't know. Andre, I don't know. My whole life, that 12-year period or whatever it was, I don't know if any of it's true or not. It's something, and I could sit around and question it every day. Do you know how miserable that would make me? I would just be like a basket case. So I've let it go. I've had to let it go and move on. It happened. I don't know what was real, what wasn't real. I know what I did was real, but I don't know if anything was. I know he was fluent in Russian. I never saw a diploma. Who knows what they even give in Russian universities, at Moscow State University. But supposedly he went there when he was only 17, and by 21 he had 2 master's degrees in quantitative economics and mathematics. And I mean, do they even really teach economics in Russia? I mean, I don't know. And I have lived with this void in those years of my life. And I could drive myself crazy asking, but I don't.
So you wind up going to Cleveland with him. You wanted to be mentored more up under him. But my question is, what was he bringing to the table that had you so intrigued that you wanted to learn? Because I understand you didn't know his Jason Bourne personality, the many faces.
Right.
So what was it about him that you did know that you just said, I got to follow this man?
Well, obviously he was successful, right? He'd done it. He started in my position and worked all his way up, was number one performer in sales, and he knew very extreme advanced techniques for estate planning and investment planning and things of that nature. And I wanted that knowledge. I wanted that education. He knew it all. I mean, estate planning is very complex, and he had all that knowledge.
You said something during the pre-interview. Let's just get right to the point. He comes, guys, go to Cleveland. You work for the company. How in the hell did he walk away with $12 million of those investors' money?
Okay. So that's different. That's when we'd started our own company by this time.
So
we no
you
longer
left
one
and started
the corporation.
Okay. So he starts the corporation.
Correct.
To start the corporation. How in the heck?
With another partner who was the former treasurer for the city of Cleveland under George Voinovich. And so these are, again, very connected people that he's all connected with.
How do you walk away with dollars and nobody knows about it? And the fact later, you find out that he's not even who he says he is.
Right. That's kind of what unraveled everything for him. That's what unraveled everything, Andre. The $12 million came out of Interior Energy. I'm not sure I should say that. I don't know how much detail I'm allowed to give, but it came out of a big corporation. And he claimed that he was just waiting for that money as a wire from somewhere else to come into his account. Now, there's also like a ambassador involved in this whole crazy scheme. And this $12 million was supposed to be coming in from another source, and it ended up in his personal account, but it was from the energy company. And then they realized that he was managing their short-term cash or something for them. And he just tried to claim it was an error. And this is where the money laundering charges came from,
But you work for him. So people would be listening to this. You didn't know what was going on?
By that time, I wasn't. By that time, I was no longer working in the office every day. I'd had a baby, and I was staying home and taking care of my son. So I was no longer in the office every day, really working.
What was it like being married to him? You're in Cleveland. You're making money. You're going to Puddin Bay and Catibo Island. You guys have boats. I mean, none of this stuff you never questioned the income, the lifestyle. I mean, what was it like living? Was it abusive?
I'm a simple girl from the Midwest. I believe you live within your means. So I assume those were our means. I mean, the day he was arrested, that was the day Princess Diana was killed, right? So Princess Diana was in the top half of the plain dealer, and he was in the bottom half of the plain dealer. And that afternoon, I got a call from the plain dealer lifestyle section because they wanted to know if they could come photograph and do an interview about our 63-foot Sea Ray boat that was, docked at one of the yacht clubs in Cleveland. And I said, don't you read your paper? It's been seized by the feds. I mean, it was a wonderful lifestyle, but I wasn't happy. I was trying to get a divorce from him anyways before all this stuff happened because there was immense control on his part. He tried to treat me like a child. And after I had a baby, I grew up really fast. I didn't want a, father figure or a mentor anymore. I wanted a partner, and that's on me. I was the one who changed the game rules. I wanted to change that relationship, not him. He probably wanted to keep it in that same vein, but I had a child and I wanted a partner in my marriage, and he didn't want to be my partner. And so I wanted a divorce, and he didn't want a divorce.
When you say you want,
and that's when all the other crazy started.
When you say you wanted a partner, this was, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I'm pretty sure some of the viewers are too. This is a guy that you clearly followed down the yellow brick road. You got a 60-some foot boat. You're living the life. Let's get real. To be in Cleveland and have a yacht, to go to all these islands, to go to Puddin Bay and stuff, you got to have money.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying at the same time, the game changed because you wanted it to change. You was already married and had a child. So what was missing in this that needed to change?
I wanted a partner. I didn't want a mentor anymore. I didn't want someone that I felt I was working with, that I wanted a partner in the marriage. I didn't want to be like a little girl anymore, with someone 15 years older and telling me what to do. I wanted to be a partner.
But how was he still treating you like that if you're no longer working for the company? You're now the mother of his child. So you're trying to say he couldn't separate the fact that you're no longer an employee, now shift into a mother and wife?
Well, it just the dynamic changed. The dynamic changed. Yeah, I questioned more. I think in the pre-interview I mentioned, if I asked questions, I was told I asked too many questions. Even like when we meet people, or he'd introduce me to people from other places, and I would ask questions, he told me that I was being nosy and that's culturally wrong, and etc. I was talked down to.
What kind of
one time I remember.
What kind of questions were you asking, Kim?
Oh, what do you do? Normal questions we ask in the United States when we meet people. What do you do? How, just questions about that, and that I was told I was being nosy.
How long were you?
I asked so many questions.
How long were you? When did the relationship start? When did red flags start to surface for you before the police kicked in your door?
Okay, so I would say I separated from my husband for the first time when my son was about 18 months. So let's see, he was born in 94. So I would say probably about, towards the end of 1995, I separated from him for the first time. And that's when things got really crazy.
How did you walk away?
Well, I had a very good friend of mine. They helped me. My husband was gone on a business trip, and when he was gone, I packed up my stuff. I didn't take joint stuff. I just packed up like my old furniture from when I was a single person and stuff. And I rented a house in South Euclid, Ohio, which is Cleveland Heights area. And I moved into a rental house there, and I got a job with a big bank running their investment desk for them. So I got a job so I could take care of myself, and I took my son and I moved.
What was his reaction?
I was able to support myself.
What was his reaction when he found out that you moved?
Oh, he was really angry. I mean, very angry. He was pissed off at the friend that helped me move, because he thought they were his friends too. Of course, they were his friends too, but they knew I was distressed. They knew I was moving, and either I could do it on my own or they could help me. So they helped me, and he was pissed. He was pissed. So, yeah, he was pissed. He wanted me home. He wanted me back.
Did you go back?
He didn't want me to divorce.
Did you go back?
Not then. Not then. Eventually, I did go back, because during that time when I was living in that house, I started receiving racially motivated death threats, threatening the life of my son. They sounded like they were coming from the Ku Klux Klan or something, and the police had to get involved, as well as the news. And it was Avery Friedman, the civil rights lawyer, got involved as well, saying it was, a clear violation of federal hate crimes. And through the investigation of the South Euclid detectives, they found out that the calls weren't coming from someone close by. They were coming from about an hour away, that there was a gray sedan following me around, and there was a white van with a big telescope pointed at my house, watching everything. And then when all this came out, he said he was having the same kind of stuff done, and then he just told me, he said, people are just jealous of us. They're so jealous of our life. They're just jealous. Come back. I'll take care of you. I'll protect you. And that's I mean, I was a nervous wreck. I literally never showed up at my job. I never even gave them notice that I was quitting. I just disappeared in the middle of a night into a condo on this place called Catawba Island where we had our boat. I went to using only cash because I was getting weird phone calls. I was on the edge of a nervous breakdown. And he said the same things were happening to him and he would protect me. So I went back.
So you go back. Did things change?
I mean, I didn't go back to him. I went to the condo and then we went and just like counseling therapy. You know, I would drive back over to Cleveland to see a therapist in Beechwood. And then I'd drive back to the condo and eventually, after about 6 months of doing that, I got my mind back and I filed for divorce again out in Huron County, which was a problem. And then he completely cut me off. He stopped paying for the condo and I wasn't working or anything then. And he completely cut me off. And eventually I went to live at my parents' summer house, which is in an island in Michigan. And he didn't know where I was. Then one day I came downstairs and he was standing in the living room and he told me I needed to be home by my birthday. If I wasn't, he was taking off the kid gloves and I would never see my kid again. And I said, well, we have a court date before that. He's like, this will never go to court. This will never go to court. You will never win this. Because he had all the money and he had the lawyers. And there's a part of me that thinks he even had some of the judges in his pocket. And he was absolutely right. He got more continuance after continuance. So finally I had to go back in June.
You said,
and I did. And then we went on our boat trip. Then we went on a boat trip to Cleveland. Go ahead.
You said
we went on a boat trip to Chicago, and that's when he got arrested.
Hold on, let's go back. You said you're on an island. Your mom and dad, evidently, you're financially well off with your family. Why didn't your family step in and did they see what was going on?
My family's not financially wealthy, but in financial planning, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And my parents are savers. They live frugally and they're savers. And so there's this small island in Michigan where my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, and my parents, they all have summer houses there, cottages. Not big, not glamorous, but beautiful.
But how many people in your family knew what you was going through?
Nobody. I kept it to myself for the most part. It wasn't until after he was arrested and I fled for Maryland because my sister lives in Maryland and had 5 kids and I thought it'd be a great place for my son to be near cousins or something. My mom called him to say, we're going down to see Kim in Maryland and can I come by and get her some clothes and her winter coat? Because I didn't take anything with me to Maryland and some of the stuff for the baby. And she said it was like talking to the devil. She never heard anything like that. And that's when they finally understood what I was going through. When I eventually got back into the house, he was Muslim, but he was practicing like voodoo and animism. There were packets with chicken bones and rocks taped over my bed and voodoo curses had been put on me and stuff like that. It was crazy.
You know, people listening to this is going to think either you were crazy for not walking away and not seeing the signs. But like I said, this is your story. We're not in that situation. So let's move forward.
Yeah.
Back. What led up to the arrest?
I guess his thing started unraveling. All his schemes and spider webs, it started unraveling. Well, Centurion Energy, the energy company, reporting it to the police, the $12 million missing. So then they started looking into that and watching where wires and everything went, and that unraveled it for him, and that's what led it to his arrest.
Were you ever under investigation?
I'm absolutely 100% sure I was under investigation. I mean, I don't know for how long, but they knew that I was completely innocent. And so I was never charged. I was never even really questioned. They knew I had no involvement whatsoever, no knowledge of anything, and I wasn't questioned. And I cooperated with them. When he was put on house arrest, they did take my passport because they didn't want any kind of a flee attempt, on either part. So they did seize my passport for a little while.
Back up. So, so the energy company reports $12 million of their money being stolen. The Ohio police and the FBI gets involved. Who recognized that this dude was using dead people's social security numbers and so forth?
I think that was the FBI. Probably because they must have seized his bank accounts or something and started looking at those numbers. And it was two. From what I remember them telling me, he was using two dead people's social security numbers.
So he goes to jail. He kicks in the door. You're at home with your son, I take it. They come in and get him on the same night that Princess Diana is deceased. But they let him out and put him on house arrest?
Yes, they did. They absolutely did. And then on top of that, because I was going through the divorce, which is a civil matter instead of a criminal matter, the judge, in all her wisdom, forced me to give custody of my 2-year-old son to a man with an ankle bracelet that couldn't leave the house. And they forced me to drive every 2 weeks between Maryland and Cleveland to turn the child over. And actually, at one point, they threatened to put me in jail unless I went with this. To this day, I wish I would have fought them, Andre, on this. I wish I would have fought them because there's no way every state would have extradited me before he went to jail. But I was afraid. I didn't want to go to jail. That's the only way I was going was because of taking my son out of Ohio.
When he went to jail and came home for house arrest, were you living in the house with him with your son?
For about 2 weeks. And then it was my sister's birthday. And I said, because we just that was that summer from June. This happened in August, right? That's when Princess Diana was killed, like the middle of August or end of August. So like June to August, yes, had reconciled and I was back in that house with him.
That sounds
for those few months.
People would say you're crazy. Like you went back in the house with a dude that not only is being charged with $12,000.
That hadn't happened yet. That hadn't happened yet. That didn't happen till August.
Okay, so let me back on. I'm trying to get some clarity here. So you go back in the house with him. When he gets arrested, when they kick in the door, what is he being charged with when they kick in that door?
Money laundering.
So when did the 12 million come up? And then the using the people's dead card where they find out he's not even supposed to be in the state. He's not even a citizen. All that came out then. None of that was known prior to that. But when he got out, he didn't get deported or anything. They put him on house arrest in his house. And you was living in the house, correct?
So what happens is that, of course, in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty, right? You have to go through the court system, through the trial. So these were just charges at that time. And with his attorneys, he was able to convince them to not put him in jail, but to put him on house arrest at his house instead. So yes, he continued to live in a 12,000 square foot house in Moreland Hills with all the comforts of his life. Well, he was awaiting trial. He did not go to jail. And then when he went to a country club prison for about 18 months. And after he served that time, when he was released to INS, who then put him in INS jail. Well, he appealed not being deported from this country. But if you are a felon, you get deported from this country. It didn't matter that he had a child here that would kind of give him status to legally stay. That did not matter. He was illegal, and as an illegal that committed the felony, he was deported. So then he was returned to his home country of Senegal.
Where were you and your son that they took your kid from you to give your kid to someone who has an ankle bracelet on, not legally a U.S. citizen, and could be deported? I mean, like, where's your son live? Where you were still living with him at that time in the house while he got the ankle bracelets?
No. I was in Maryland. I had escaped to Maryland. October 10th, I left and went to Maryland.
And your son was with you?
No longer in that.
And your son was with you?
I took my son, yes.
Then how in the hell did you have to return your son over to him if your son is with you, knowing it wasn't the judge aware of everything that was going on?
The judge, just when I tried to bring this up, so I wanted the day before I was supposed to go to court for the divorce hearing, right? My lawyer called me and quit my case. And I said, what do you mean you're quitting? We have a court date tomorrow. He said, I'm quitting this case. And I said, that's crazy. What am I going to do? And he said, well, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to meet you at the court tomorrow. I had to drive from Maryland to Cleveland to be in the court. And he said, I'm going to go in. I'm going to ask to be let off the case. Then you can stand up and ask for a continuation to find proper counsel. I said, I can't believe you're doing this to me. I paid you, a lot of money. I can't believe you're doing this to me. You've never even been to court. Everything else had been continued by my ex-husband. Finally, we're going in. And you're quitting this day. And he said, yeah. So I said, okay. So, I had no choice. And so he goes in and he quits. The judge lets him off. I stand up and say, Your Honor, I would like to get a continuance so I can get proper counsel. She said, you don't need proper counsel, and ordered me into a child custody hearing without counsel, and took my child and turned him over to my soon-to-be ex-husband. And if I didn't comply, I was going to jail. And I had 48 hours to get that kid back to Ohio. And if I didn't, I was going to jail.
Did you, when you got back to Maryland, did you contact an attorney and
No, how can a Maryland attorney represent me? Maryland wouldn't hear the case. It's a Cleveland case. It was filed in Cleveland in Cuyahoga County. And this is why I say I think he had that judge in his pocket. What judge does that? What judge takes a kid or doesn't even give me a chance to get counsel and takes the kid and gives him to a felon on house arrest? The judge's exact words sounds like more reason why he should spend time with his son. That's what the judge said. And it was a woman.
Before we wrap up this story, crazy story, truly crazy. So what was it like for you? Now you got 48 hours to turn your son over to someone and then tripped out part about it is, what were you thinking? This is a two-part question. What were you thinking when the police told you all that you had to know about your now husband? He's not here. Dead people's social security number, fraud, embezzlement. To me, this is straight up Jason Bourne. And now you leaving, and you got 48 hours to turn your child over to this man that could. I mean, I'm gonna call him what it is, Jason Bourne. He can leave the city, and the next thing you'd be calling the equalizer to go get your child. Let's be real.
I know. I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and in fact, I was living in a shelter for abused people at that time. I was at the end of my rope, Andre. I really was. I wasn't depressed. I never went to depression. I just kept fighting and treading water to keep my head above, to keep my child, to keep my head above water, to get through it, to just get through it. And in retrospect, I wish I'd never turned that child over to him, because now I know that Cleveland would have had to extradite me through Pennsylvania, through so many states, each court place to extradite me to get me back to Cleveland with that kid. If I would have just held on to him. But I was afraid, and I didn't know what to do. And I was, as I said, I was living in a shelter, and I had a crappy job selling Chevys and Toyotas, and I was paying way too much money for daycare, and I didn't get a dime of support ever. To this date, child support's never been ordered from that man. Nothing. And granted, he's in jail and deported and he couldn't pay it, but it would at least nice to know that it was accruing in the background or something. I had to do it all on my own, Andre, all on my own. And I was a basket case.
When you had to turn your child over,
just going.
When you had to turn your child over, what was that like for you? And to know you had to drive back to Maryland.
It was hell. It was hell. And I had to drive back because I was selling crappy cars, and I had to be back at the dealership. Like I would literally drive, 8 to 10 hours to Cleveland, turn them over and drive 8 to 10 hours back to Maryland on my one day off a week, Sunday. And I had to do that every 2 weeks with no help for the cost of that gas or anything. It was all on me. And the judge said if I didn't like it, I shouldn't have left. That's what the judge told me.
So he winds up getting.
He was a real bitch.
He winds up getting deported, correct?
Eventually, after he serves the 18 months in the country club prison, yes.
When he went to go get served in prison, did you get your kid back? Oh,
well, it was a 2 week. So I had to give him for 2 weeks, and I had to pick him up, and I got him for 2 weeks, and then he had to go there for 2 weeks, and so it was a joint custody during that time, right? And yes, I absolutely had my kid back. No questions asked. The federal marshals called me and said, once he was fully convicted and he went off to jail, they said, we've got him. If you want, go to the house, get whatever you want out of that house, because they knew selling furniture, they get pennies or whatever. So I was able to get some of my stuff so that I could start a life for my kid and I. So eventually I moved out of the shelter. I bought a house in Maryland, and that was a whole another story in itself, which we probably don't have time for. And I started a life for us down there.
So let me retract before we leave. He was on house arrest. So during that house arrest, he was able to have pretty much, you had joint custody, but he had joint legal custody. The kid basically lived with him. And then you guys you get the kid for 2 weeks. He gets the kid for 2 weeks. He got to keep the kid until he went off to prison, did he? So he didn't see the kid no more.
Yes.
Okay. So then you get
2 weeks he'd have him, 2 weeks I'd have him, and that went on until he went to prison. So that went on for about 6 months during the trial period. And then he went to jail, and it all ended.
Great. Such a great story of sticking with your guns and doing what you had to do. Before we wrap up, if you had to do it all over again, because I know some people are going to say, damn, she was naive. And you probably were. Let's be real. 24 years old, you was mesmerized by the different languages.
The glamour. The galas, the glamour, private jets, everything.
Now, if you had to look back, what would you tell yourself?
Wow. I would do it all again because it gave me one thing that's the greatest thing in this world, and it gave me my son. I got my son from that man, and every experience that I went through, every turn, every twist made me exactly who I am at this moment, and I am so happy about who I am now. I don't mean to get emotional, but I'm happy with my life. I'm happy where I am. I thank God I had those experiences, and I've had other experiences since then, and they've all made me exactly who I am. I wouldn't change a thing.
What were the three most exciting experiences that you learned the most from dealing with this?
How to let go. How to let go. There's people that hold on to crap. And if you just hold on to the crap in your life, new good stuff can't happen to you. So you got to let go of crap. That's the biggest lesson. And to never give up. And I think that's enough lessons right there, those two.
Now let's go to a good part of your life. What are you doing now? You're on the journey of getting ready to write a book. What are you doing now? You got that smile. You definitely got that beast mindset. I'm glad you got your son back. I guess it tells your story. If anything, should tell us. Maybe we need to do some fingerprinting on people to find out who they really are.
In our job, we're fingerprint. Andre, in my job as a financial investment advisor, we are all fingerprinted by the FBI, and our backgrounds are checked. I don't know how we got through that. To this day, there's so many questions like that. Like, how would you get through that? You couldn't have dead people's fingerprints. How did he get through that?
That's a good question. I'm gonna try to find him and have him on the show so he can tell us how he did it. But tell us what's going on with you now before we wrap up. What's your life like now?
Well, now I'm in 2021. I went through another divorce, my third, unfortunately. I still believe in love. I'm just all I want now is to be happy. I've had fantastic, amazing experiences. I've traveled my whole life. Actually, my job was eliminated in 2023. Since then, I've been traveling. For my 60th birthday, I'm 61 years old. For my 60th birthday, I took myself to Barcelona and went through the Spanish and French med down there on a cruise and saw a lot. And my son's like, well, Mom, meet me in London. I said, no, if you want to join me, you can meet me in Barcelona, but don't think you're going to ruin my trip. My whole life, I've had other people telling me what to do, when to do it, where I was going to go. Now I'm doing exactly what I want. And unless you're on board with that, don't bother to come. And I'm just being me, and I'm just so happy, and I just spread joy, and I'm just about the happy right now. That's it.
You look like you're happy. Kim, thank you so much for taking time out to share such an extraordinary journey of trial, tribulation, and overcoming. Love to have you to come back in. I know there's a part.
It's like a Lifetime movie.
I know there's another part to your journey, and we'll have you come back and share that with us. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.
Thanks for having me, Andre the Beast. You're awesome. Bye.